So on Power Talk this week, we have this conversation on the eve of Kenya International Investment Conference 2026. How do you turn investor interest into real deals that provide opportunities for Kenyans in country? Cabinet Secretary for Industry, Trade and Investments, join now, C.S. Lee Kinyanjui. Thank you so much for being with us. Let's just start talking about, this is coming at an interesting time and we'll speak about where the world is. But how different is this conference, the third edition, the fourth edition? How different is this going to be, or what are some of the expected outcomes of this, having done this 3 years prior?
Thank you for this opportunity, and let me first start by saying that the conference starts tomorrow, which is the 25th, to run up to the 27th, and we have confirmations from across the world, from the Middle East to China, the Asian subcontinent, the Far East, and basically within the African continent. The main purpose of this particular conference is to showcase what Kenya has to offer from an investment perspective. We've had very many inquiries, some coming at their own time, but we thought that it is important to put everything under one roof, showcase Kenya and also connect with the world, because we see a very huge interest on Kenyan investment space. One of the key things that is driving people to Kenya is the macroeconomic environment. You will want to remember that for example, our currency has been able to stand at the 128.29 for the last almost now 2 years. Now, that's not a feat that you find in many of our third or developing countries. You used to be able to, take your dividends or your profits back to your mother country at any one time. The central bank will not be there to stop you or regulate you when you want to do this. So there's a lot of good management within the economy that has actually made Kenya quite attractive to everybody. Not to mention that we have also special economic zones. These are dedicated zones where you get tax holidays, you get benefits even in terms of setup, and they become very attractive in terms of getting the foreign investors come. So this is really the conversation that you want to have tomorrow.
Yeah, so these are the sort of the proposition, the investment proposition that you're giving to those who've declared interest. What are some of the key challenges and gaps, even with everything you said is attractive right now? What are some of those key challenges and gaps that you're looking to mitigate to give investors even more confidence in the country?
I think when investors look into investing in a country, they have to consider the sum total of everything, not one factor, not say the cost of energy, which may not be maybe the most competitive, but one thing about our energy is that it is available. Even if you go to the rural parts of Kenya, it may be expensive, but available. But you're also working towards ensuring that we also have other alternative sources of energy, including electric. For mobility now, Kenya is actually leading in the region in terms of the EV electric vehicles, whether they are motorbikes for distribution or buses now in Nairobi, we're actually going electric. So energy would be one of them. And I think the other one would just be issues that you would call geopolitical, that have nothing to do specifically with Kenya. But when it comes to the political climate in Kenya, I think there's something that Kenyans don't appreciate. Maybe this is probably the only place in the continent where you can be able to plan on 20 years, because you're sure there'll be an election, the transition is okay. I mean, there'll be, all those things. But eventually, the country runs the way it should be. That political stability is a statement that continues to be a major attraction. Not to mention also things like our constitution, where both the government and the citizens are all subject to the law of the land. And that gives comfort and predictability in the investment climate in the country.
Yeah, and we're talking national, which is important, but how about county level investments?
Yeah.
We're in a devolved system and structure. How to ensure that counties are included in, say, this conference and its possible outcomes?
Yeah. In our planning, we have included the county government and the Council of Governors for that matter, because we believe there's no part of Kenya that is not a county. So if we are to move forward, we want to move forward together. One of the areas we've been trying to look at is how we can be able to have a harmonized sort of licensing regime, because traditionally when you move from one county to the other, there's a bit of disparity, and that's why we came up with a uniform licensing bill, which has now come to law, and therefore we'll be looking at operationalization. So there's a lot of conversation going on at the county level, and I want to commend many of the counties are actually becoming pro-business, including going digital. If you want to apply for your permits, if you want to pay for your licenses, your building license, all those other things, I think that's really how we would want to work. Last year, we actually launched a county competitive index, just trying to recognize that each county has its own competitive advantage that the others may not have, and that we can be able to learn from each other. So when it comes to the conversation around investments, we want to look at counties as part of Kenya, and therefore making them more competitive is our responsibility, and we're working together with the governors across the country.
Yeah. So conferences like these can sometimes become talk shop, Waziri. Yes. How do you make sure that you have some outcome of deals? What are the expectations that Kenyans can look forward to over the next 2 days or 3 days with this conference?
Traditionally, the people who are coming have had an opportunity to sample some of the things that Kenya has to offer. For example, we have a leather park at the river, and this leather park is actually going to be a huge game changer. So we have a huge delegation coming from Italy, trying to look at the possibilities of buying leather locally, converting it into shoes and other leather products. And we have actually converted that entire place into a special economic zone, which means also we have all those incentives that go along with that. So the groups that are coming are also targeted, and they have already looked at the landscape. We expect to sign not less than about $2.5 billion. And that is enough to employ over 50,000 Kenyans in the next 2 years. So I think this is a space to watch. And just to confirm that in the last 3 years, when His Excellency, the President, has gone out, including to China, to the US, and all these other places that we've been going to look for investors, I would say the conversion has been very good. And we have companies that have come here, others are expanding, others are looking to bring products that were previously not here. Mm-hmm. And we see a bright future for the country. And just to mention also some of the infrastructure that is currently under construction, including the SGR now connecting towards Uganda, is part of the conversation that everybody wants to hear. How do I get my products into the East Africa region? So a well-connected transport system reduces your cost of operation, your competitiveness when you finally get to the market. We are talking of the airports being expanded. That also means that if you have to sell our fresh produce out of the country, we have a bigger capacity. So Kenya is gearing for a takeoff. And I think all these expansions, including at the port of Mombasa, in Lamu, is all part of creating an environment where Kenya can produce not just for itself, but for the continent and for the world. And we've seen, even in the textile space, a lot of interest in that area. So some of the steps we may be taking, from railway to rail, to the port, and also at the HR level, our training of our young people, very well trained and schooled in IT and all the other relevant skills. I think all that makes Kenya an unbeatable country when it comes to investment destination. These are some of the things we'll be packaging, and we are very hopeful that we'll be able to get tangible terms.
Right, and Waziri, this conference is happening at an interesting time in the world. We understand the crisis in the Middle East, the US-Israel versus Iran war. Now, this has affected trade significantly. I mean, Iran is a big importer of Kenya's tea, about $50 million every year. And then there's the meat exports to the Middle East region, which are usually even higher during the just concluded Ramadan season. And we're hearing from them that they're losing about 300 million shillings every week. Waziri, have you engaged these industry players directly?
Yes, let me say nobody planned for this war, so no government really can say we were adequately prepared. But I think at all times it's always good to test your systems to situations such as this. We had COVID before and many other things that could come. But one important thing about Kenya is that we are not a one or two commodity exporter only. So we're in the fresh produce, we're also in coffee, we're in tea, we are in tourism, we are big in ICT, and for that reason, sometimes even when shock comes from one area, it may not be as devastating as if we were relying only on one product. But what have we done? part of our fresh produce to the Middle East and some of those other countries is being rerouted partly through maybe Egypt, Saudi. There isn't a big problem, so also that can be transported. And I think the good thing, especially for meat, is good to say that whether there is war or no war, people will still eat. So the thing is trying to get to channel the food in it may take a little bit longer to get the destination, but we are still selling part of the food. For the flowers and other fresh produce, it's good to know that even if the produce was not going to the Middle East, the biggest carriers are actually from the Middle East. So whether it's Qatar or Emirates or any other. And therefore, when there's disruption, even our exports to countries like Japan or Singapore and the others can be affected. So there's a bit of rerouting going on. And I want to say that no country has been able to 100% adapt to the situation we are in. But I think Kenya is doing well, but it remains key because, as you probably know, our PCS, Excellency Musalia Mudavadi, was in India the other day because we're also trying to play at the diplomatic level, trying to find a solution into this global conflict. So I think we are trying to do it at all levels. And I must also say that for our cold chain systems, because fish or flowers and vegetables require a cold chain system, I think this is a lesson we take that we to expand. Is to have that. But in the meantime, I want to confirm that some of the incentives we have placed, for example, in our financial systems, that you can be able to bank in Kenya, even if you're not a Kenyan and you're not even a citizen. Some of the things we have instituted, such as no visa for Africans, simply means that you don't really need to work too hard to find your way in Kenya, and the investments are stable. If you look at some of the real estate developments we have here in Nairobi and also Mombasa and many of our other big cities, about 40 to 50% of them are being bought by people from outside Kenya. That just shows you the confidence that foreigners are placing on Kenya. And I think this is something we really need to be proud of.
Okay.
And we are here to keep the momentum.
All right, indeed. Thank you very much. Cabinet Secretary in charge of Investments, Trade and Industry, Lee Kinyanjui, on the eve of the Kenya International Investment Conference, discussing the opportunities and the proposition that Kenya presents for the world. That's Power Talk.